enforcement and military personnel, and we can listen in here if he's talking.
Right where? Okay, hello. It's a healthy, attractive-looking group of people. It's good. Well, I just want to thank everybody very much for being here. I wanted to do this. We've had some incredible results. The results have come out, and it's like a different place. It's like a different city. It's the capital. It's going to be the best in the world. We're going to do what you're doing with law enforcement, and very importantly also, we're going to physically do it. We're going back to Congress for some money, and we're going to redo a lot of the pavement, a lot of the medians, a lot of the graffiti's all coming off real fast. It's going to come down real fast. We're working with Clark Construction. They're one of the big ones. They're the biggest here by far, actually. And we're going to be not so much building, it's cleaning and fixing and redoing and putting brand new surfaces down on your roads and streets. And when people come in from the airport all the way to the Capitol or the White House or any place else they go, and they're going to say, boy, this place is spotless. So we're doing that. Most importantly, though, we're going to have a crowd of people that are going to be happy. You know, I've received more phone calls from people in the last 4 days than I ever have. I've been here now 4 years plus. And by the way, I think we had about the best 7 months, they're saying, that any president's had. We've done a lot of work. We've done a lot of good work, including the biggest tax cuts that you've ever had. I know you guys don't care about taxes, so you don't care about saving a little tax, but you saved a lot of tax, actually. But we've had a great period of time. But I've never received so many phone calls thanking me for what we've done in Washington, D.C., from people that haven't gone to a restaurant literally in 4 years. And they said, you know, what you've done it's unprecedented, because what they said, it was just unsafe. We couldn't do it. We'd go out and you'd see the stories, you'd read the stories, you'd see all of the things that are happening. And they said, we couldn't stand it, sir. And now I take my wife and my kids to dinner. One of them said he's gone out 4 nights in a row, and he hadn't gone out for 4 years. So it's a great tribute to you. And when I look at you people, I understand why, because there's no games, right? We're not playing games. We're going to make it safe. And we're going to then go on to other places. But we're going to stay here for a while. We want to make this absolutely perfect. It's our capital. And I guess it used to be many years ago safe, but it's certainly not had a very good run. And you got to be strong, you got to be tough, you got to do your job. Whatever it takes to do your job, you got to do your job. But the crime numbers are way down. I'm looking at, you saw some of the stats, they just read them out to me inside, the numbers that we haven't seen here ever, actually ever. And I think it's probably, right now, to me, I feel very safe now, and I'm hearing people are very safe, but I know within 2 weeks it's going to be, Pam, it's going to be at a level that's even far superior. So I just wanted to thank you all. You're doing incredible. You're incredible people. You make the country run, frankly. You make the whole place run. We're going to have the best Capitol ever. We're going to have it's going to look better than it ever did. Even at the White House, I'm building a ballroom. They've been after a ballroom for 150 years, but they never had a real estate guy as a president. You know, I've done a lot of ballrooms, and we're going to make this one the best of them all. But we're doing a real job. As far as the country's concerned, we're respected again. We had a country that was laughed at a year ago. They thought they couldn't understand what was happening, and it's about leadership. But we had a country that was a dead country in many ways. I went to Saudi Arabia. I went to Qatar. I went to UAE. We came back with $5.1 trillion of investment in this country. And we're over 17 trillion. Now, a lot of you don't know what that means, and nobody knows what it means because it's never happened before. In 5 months, because really it's a 5-month, even though we're here 7, but we started 5 months ago in terms of investment, and we have, because they see what's happened to our country, we're going to be over 17 trillion with a T, dollars of investment. There's never been anything close. If we did 1 trillion in a year, and we're talking about over a 5-month period, maybe 6 months if you look at it, but over $17 trillion. We're building plants, auto plants, AI plants, all sorts of plants all over the country. I'm giving them the right Lee Zeldin's done a fantastic job. We give him the right to build electric plants. They become almost like a public utility because we have old grids. We have a lot of stuff that's old. We wouldn't be able to compete with China AI. And now we're totally leading the AI race and the artificial intelligence. It's a big deal. And it's the hottest thing there is for probably in 35, 40 years. It's a lot of people don't know what it is. Just trust me, it's very hot. It's big. But they need massive amounts of electricity. They need more electricity than we have right now in the whole country servicing everything. In other words, we have to at least double it up to be competitive and to be leading. And we're more than doubling it up. And what I'm doing is I'm letting all of these very rich companies, and they've got nothing but they got a lot of money, and they want to invest it in the United States, and they're building big plants, but they're building electric plants with it. I said, you build your building, and these are buildings that cost 30, 40, 50 billion dollars when you include everything that's inside, all the technology. I said, I'm going to let you build electric plants to fire your own electricity, and anything that you have left over, you sell it back into the grid. So all of these big factories that are being built are building their own electric plants fired by oil and gas. They're not fired by wind, by the way, because wind doesn't work, but we won't say that. It destroys everything. It looks terrible. It's a very expensive form of energy. And we're not doing wind. We're going back to fossil fuel. I hope not too many of you people are going to be upset, but we have to go back to what works. We can't be foolish. But we're building massive electric plants all over the country. The companies are building, and then they sell it back into the grid. But we're building numbers that nobody's ever seen. We're auto plants. We have many auto plants going up, whereas during the last 4 years, as you know, we had like none. People weren't investing here. So where they weren't investing and they were leaving. But I just finished by saying this. So I was with the King of Saudi Arabia. I was with all of the NATO leaders a couple of weeks ago, and they are putting up not 2%, but 5%. They said 5% of GDP, that's a lot of money. They'll have trillions of dollars put up. They were putting up 2, but they weren't paying it. Now they're putting up 5, and they're all paying it. And they all said the same thing. They said, 1 year ago, your country was dead. We never thought it was coming back. And now you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. These are the leaders of other countries, the prime ministers and the presidents, every one of them said essentially the same thing, said we had a dead country, and we were. We felt that way, and we were. And this place was emblematic of it with the crime, the horrible crime. And, you know, I watch these phony reports. Oh, we were on the way back. They weren't on the way back. It was worse than ever just a short while ago. But now it's going to be, I think now, right now, it's better than it has been in years. And in a couple of weeks, it's going to be even far better than that. And everybody's safe now. Everybody feels safe. And they're all coming in. And people are now coming in. They're making reservations to come in. They want to be in Washington, D.C. One of the things we're going to be redoing is your parks. I'm very good at grass because I have a lot of golf courses all over the place. I know more about grass than any human being, I think, anywhere in the world. And we're going to be regrassing all of your parks, all brand new sprinkler systems, the best that you can buy, just like Augusta. It'll look like Augusta. It'll look like, more importantly, Trump National Golf Club. That's even better. But we're going to have all brand new, beautiful grass. You know, like everything else, grass has a life. Do you know that? Grass has a life. You know, we have a life and grass has a life. And the grass here died about 40 years ago. So we're going to be rebuilding all of your parks, and it's going to happen fast. It's going to go up like a miracle. So you do the job on safety, and I'll get this place fixed up physically, and we're going to be so proud of it at the end of 6 months. But let's say at the end of a year, this place will be maxed out in terms of beauty. You'll have all new surfaces. You'll have all new medians. Everything's going to look beautiful. A lot of your signs are going to be taken down. They've been up for 40 years. They look like hell. They look like they're barely standing up. They're falling off their holders. And we're going to have all new everything. And I want to just thank Doug for doing such an incredible job. You've been unbelievable. You're a popular guy. No, he's an amazing guy. He's an amazing guy. Everybody love him. We love you. And his wife is so incredible. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Pam, thank you very much. What a job. People don't realize. They're going to see. She'll go down as the greatest Attorney General we've had. I really mean it, too. And where's my Christy? You dear. Thank you very much. She's been incredible. And she can ride a horse like nobody. She gets on those horses, she rips those horses around. But I want to thank you very much. And Steve Miller, so fantastic. And Todd Blanche, who's been with me so long, and he's one of the best lawyers you'll ever find. And we're having a lot of victories. I had a victory today. You know, they stole $550 million from me with a fake case, and it was overturned. They said this was a fake case. It's a terrible thing, but that's a nice victory, you know? I mean, it's not bad. You know, we all have our limits, but this was a terrible thing that done. It was a witch hunt, and I've had more witch hunts than any human being, I think, in history. And here we are with the President of the United States, so it didn't work out too well for them, but maybe now it's turned a little bit. These are very dishonest people. We have to fight. We have to win, because we have to win. And you people are winners, and I just think it's such an honor to be with you. And we're going to make Washington, D.C. great again. We're making our country great again. The country is very close to being great. When they say it's the hottest country in the world, they mean it. And this Capitol is right now, after 4 days, 5 days, it's at a level that you haven't seen in a long time, and it's all because of you. So I want to thank you all very much. It's an honor to be with you, and we'll always be with you. We're going to be with you for as long as I'm around. You're going to be treated as nobody more important, and thank you all very much for being here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Doug, would you like to say something? Please. Thank you, everybody.
Sir.
That game drove me crazy.
Have I spent too much time at
No.
I love it.
I know your stuff here. Whoops.
Well, guys, this just in. Fox can confirm that President Trump will go on patrol tonight in our nation's capital with law enforcement and military personnel at his side. President Trump broke the news today in a radio interview, and we expect more reportable details shortly. Shannon, an incredible development. We know that the Vice President and the Secretary of Defense walked through Union Station earlier, highlighting the troublesome situation there. Tonight, the President.
Very interesting, because normally the streets of D.C. at night, we do not generally run around there in certain sections. I'll be very interested to see which sections of the city he actually goes to. But I think this is just kind of putting the cherry on top of the sundae that they want to show there are ways to clean things up in a city. And I think they're very much signaling that this is potentially coming to other blue cities and blue states, which the left is very worried about.
This also demonstrates, in my opinion, Joe, that the president, as always, is seeking to serve the American people. Yep. This is not, as the libs claim, a king federalizing D.C. No, this is someone who cares deeply about the safety of those residents there, and walking among them, he's proving them.
Always judge somebody, Emily, not on their words, but their actions, especially a president. And Joe Biden, last year at this time, was on a beach in Delaware for an extended period of time. Trump, from what I have seen, has not taken an August vacation. Maybe he plays a little golf here and there, but here he is owning the news cycle once again. The bottom line is that 91% of D.C. residents think that crime is a serious or top concern in that city. We've all been there. We've all gone through Union Station. I would tell you that even where I work, 16th and K, right near the White House, I wouldn't go outside at past 9 o'clock at night. And that is our nation's capital, the greatest country in the world. And it cannot be acceptable that it has a higher crime rate by 6 times over than Peru, Lima, the capital there. And yeah, obviously cities throughout this country. If Washington, D.C. was a state, it would have the highest homicide rate per capita. That cannot continue anymore. And Donald Trump's going to go out there tonight. Is he going to arrest anybody? No, of course not. But it's a show of force. And that's what Trump is doing right now. And Democrats, they want to defend this. They want to criticize this. It's like being anti-cancer, like being the way they are talking about crime being A-OK in Washington, D.C., when we know that's not the case. It's
a show of solidarity, to Joe's point, Doctor, that the president is not levying these decrees from inside a gated White House. He is out there with the other residents saying, your safety is important to me.
Well, I think people who live amongst a lot of these crime-ridden cities are watching this very closely. I mean, I was just in New York all day with my kids yesterday, and it's really difficult being around all of the crime. We have the homeless constantly going. We have police. We have people who are in verbal altercations. It's really upsetting. And a lot of these cities across our country are just failing. And so the president is going out, coming out of his safe little bubble of the White House to show people with law and order, we can get to a safer America. And I think a lot of people this resonates with. A lot of people voted last year for the safety of their communities. And I think he's just going on with this. And we will start seeing more and more of this happening in blue cities all across the country.
Lisa, what a stark contrast to the prior administration. I mean, to Joe's point about him just being on the beach, could you ever, this is what an incredible president we have that actually serves and is among the American people.
I think it's like triumphant, right? Like he conquered the 2024 election and now he's conquering the streets of Washington, D.C. And I'll just remind, I mean, really, like that's how I view it. And then, you know, even, you know, like Dems want to be like, oh, well, crime's down. Yeah. Well, the Department of Justice is investigating D.C. officials with concerns that they cooked the books. And by the way, a D.C. police commander was suspended and under investigation for that very concern. So those numbers are probably a lie. Also, D.C. is so unlike any other city because the Constitution grants Congress authority over Washington, D.C. President Trump has the authority over the D.C. National Guard, and then the Home Rule Act gives him the authority over the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police. So he is within the, you know, the rules of the law. And to me, this is like conquering D.C. Like, look what I can do.
Yeah, Shannon, you host Fox News Sunday, obviously in D.C. What have the politicians there told you about their staffs and their personal experiences and how they're, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's heartbreaking. We think it wasn't that long ago that an intern was killed in D.C., somebody who was a staff, you know, working for staff on Capitol Hill. Yeah. And we all have stories of our own or a coworker or a friend or somebody we know on Capitol Hill who has been a crime victim. It is unfortunately common there in D.C. Now, there are those who are there who are protesting who don't like what they feel like is a takeover by the feds. But look at what you're seeing from the mayor and the police chief there in D.C. They've been relatively cooperative. Like, we could use more help on the streets here. And the fact is that so many of the people who are in D.C. are tourists. And I love that they want to come and celebrate their city. And when you see them there, you see their innocence and you're thinking, ooh, I need to nudge them away from doing this or that. And I'll have people who are coming to visit town, like, where should I go? At what time should I stop being out? That kind of thing. They're actual concerns for people. So I think we should want our city, which is the capital of the world in a lot of ways, to be completely safe and welcoming for anybody who wants to come visit.
And I can't wait for the photo ops with President Trump tonight. You know, law and order. I can't wait to see what happens.
USA.
Yeah. What will he wear? Yeah. Is there going to be like a law enforcement motif? Is it going to be a suit with a hat? I don't know.
Bulletproof vest saying, Mr. President.
All of these details we will bring you as we learn them. And of course, that will be really an exciting evening indeed.
President Trump may be rolling out on patrol in Washington later this evening. We're expecting him to leave the White House this afternoon. He wants to get a firsthand look at law enforcement and the National Guard in D.C. That's one day after Vice President Vance and Defense Secretary Hegseth faced down some pretty loud protesters at Union Station. Watch this.
This is the guy who thinks people don't deserve law and order in their own community.
Mr. Vice President, how did it go?
Thank you.
Lots of booze. All right, with that, we bring in Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. He has long pushed for the National Guard when it is needed to restore law and order from the 2020 riots. He recommended it. That piece got yanked from the New York Times to earlier this year in Los Angeles. And writing now for FoxNews.com, Trump is right to bring law and order back to D.C. Senator, it's great to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the fact that President Trump wants to get in the car and go out and take a look firsthand at what is going on in the streets with these National Guard members in town.
Martha, thanks for having me. I think it's entirely appropriate for President Trump to want to put eyes on what's happening on the streets. No different, for instance, from going to the border to meet with CBP agents there or going to a military base to meet with the troops. These are federal officers, whether they're National Guard that have been called out on federal orders or FBI agents or DEA agents, ICE officers, what have you. And he wants to hear from them and see exactly what they're doing. And frankly, they're doing a great job. The numbers are in now since President Trump ordered this crackdown in Washington, D.C. on runaway crime and homelessness. There have been 0 murders. That's a very uncommon situation for Washington over the span of a week plus, because the city, unfortunately, has had a runaway crime problem now going back 10, 15 years. It's gotten much worse since I was first elected to Congress. Thousands of Arkansans go to Washington every year. Arkansas grandparents should be able to take their grandkids to Washington, D.C. and go to Smithsonian's, go to the Lincoln Memorial, go to Arlington National Cemetery without being accosted by hardened criminals or illegal aliens or deranged homeless lunatics. President Trump is taking the appropriate steps to protect what is, after all, a federal city from runaway crime to make sure it's usable and livable for all Americans.
I think we've all seen the degradation of our cities over the last several years. And when you first brought up this idea that maybe this is a role occasionally for the National Guard to provide a sense of security on the streets, which is what they're doing in D.C., do you feel vindicated by what you're seeing now, even though you do see a lot of pushback and protest to their presence?
Martha, I wouldn't say I feel vindicated, but I feel pleased for the residents of Washington, D.C. and the millions of Americans who visit the city every year who can do so now without being accosted on the streets. I hope that remains the case going forward. And the National Guard is never the front line of defense. It's always first the local police. And then if that can't work, then in a state, it's using state resources like state troopers or even the state National Guard. In Washington, D.C., of course, the National Guard is special. It's unique. There is no governor in Washington, D.C., so it answers directly to the president through the Department of the Army. But when you call in the National Guard, they can perform important supporting logistical functions that allow the police, or in this case, federal law enforcement officers like the FBI or the DEA, to go out and arrest hardened criminals or execute search warrants on violent felons. That's an entirely appropriate role, and it's good for the people of Washington, D.C. and all Americans.
Just one last question for you. What goes through your mind as you listen to these protesters and you see the folks that are actually turning out to protest, and who the real victims are in D.C.?
Well, they look to me like a bunch of crazed ideologues who may not even live in Washington, D.C., and almost certainly don't live in the crime-infested parts of Washington, D.C. I bet a lot of them live in very wealthy, nice neighborhoods in Northwest Washington or in the suburbs of Maryland and Virginia. Very easy for them to protest the National Guard or the DEA or ICE arresting hardened felons in Washington, D.C., when they can go back to gated communities in the suburbs.
Yeah. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you very much. We've come a long way from your pulled op-ed in the New York Times back in 2020 suggesting that there might be a need for the Guard at times like this. Thank you, Senator. Good to see you.
Thank you.
At any moment, President Trump is expected to go on patrol in D.C., riding alongside law enforcement and military personnel to witness firsthand the impact of his law and order crackdown, which so far it has delivered results. D.C. had a murder-free week as Attorney General Pam Bondi touted 77 more arrests last night in the federal takeover. Trump is following in the footsteps of his cabinet, who showed up at Union Station in D.C. yesterday. Vice President Vance, Pete Hegseth, and Stephen Miller visiting guardsmen, but they also got heckled by left-wing protesters.
The voices that you hear out there, those crazy communists, they have no roots, they have no connections to the city, they have no families they're raising in this city. They're the ones who've been advocating for the 1%, the criminals, the killers, the rapists, the drug dealers. So we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies that all need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old, and we're going to get back to the business of protecting the American people and the citizens of Washington, D.C.
The media also expressing some outrage at Vance and Company.
For them to talk about that these policies or bringing the National Guard is to actually make it safer for Black communities is actually insulting.
But J.D. Vance took his campaign for the Republican presidential nomination to Union Station today to bring Shake Shack burgers to the National Guard troops.
They did not go to Union Station yesterday for fun. They did not go there to talk to the National Guard. They knew there were protesters there. They went there to be on TV and to get these moments and get everyone talking about it.
Greg, it occurs to me that the Democrats are going back in time, not just to 2020 when they wanted to defund the police, but farther back in time, like the 60s or 70s when they were against military.
Yeah, they can't win because their reflex is instinctive support for the bad guy because they've been brainwashed by their hatred for law enforcement, their hatred for Trump. So they end up defending the worst of the worst. You know, carjackers are just misguided teens. Spousal abusers are the Maryland dad. An alleged pedophile. He almost made it to be D.C. dad, but then he got caught. If terrorists flew planes into the building, they would blame it on Trump's love for tall buildings. They'd find a way. I don't think that the media has gotten to the realization that they can't do what they used to do. You know, you can't just grab disturbing footage of an arrest and portray the arrestee as a victim, because in a few hours, we always find out the guy is bad news. I love the ride along with Trump. He should try to make an arrest, maybe tase a molester. I would like that. And what Stephen Miller said, you know, it's ironic. Those are the guys that are defending the black citizens of D.C. It's not white liberals. Those are the guys. You can paint them in their dark light as some kind of evil fascist, but they're the people that are actually making the city safer. And he's right about those protesters. We get them out here. Not one of them is under the age of 77. And if you go up, it's sad. And if you go up to one of the women, because they'll be yelling, and you go, "Excuse me, madam, where is your husband?" Their heads will explode. One last thing: the Dems willfully assume that systems cannot be corrupted, no matter what it is, whether it's asylum or transgenders in prison, illegals, criminal justice reform. They just think everybody's going to play by the rules. One guy actually claimed that ICE abducted his wife. And everybody freaked out until you saw a video of him dragging something that looked like a body from his house. But Democrats can't assume that, like, they know how to game the system, because you will believe any lie that comes your way. That guy ended up fleeing the country because he was able to lie about what happened to his wife, which he obviously killed.
Control Room, could you please play the other soundbite from Vice President Vance talking about taking back cities?
If you've got the political will to enforce the law, you can make even cities like D.C. safe again, and that's what we're demonstrating. I hope the American people just recognize that you don't have to live with lawlessness. You don't have to live with third world murder rates. If you just take control of these cities, you can make them safe places to live in.
Jesse, this reminded me of something that used to drive me a little bit crazy during the Biden administration, which is like when they weren't doing anything for like a long time, and you think, well, didn't you go there to solve problems? Like, isn't that what you want to do? And they're solving problems, maybe on warp speed, might make some people uncomfortable. But I do imagine that there are people in other cities like Philly that you're familiar with saying, could we get some help around here?
Yeah, they should send the Guard everywhere. Biden could never walk the beat because he couldn't walk. And Kamala never did it because she was afraid of her prosecutor's shadow. I love that Trump's going out there like a general to inspect the troops. Sometimes I go walking through my pod to see my team booking and cutting tape, and I shake their hands and I introduce myself, and they're inspired. I'm inspired. I'm with Greg. This is the best episode of Cops we're ever going to see. I hope he does a field sobriety test on some sloppy drunk kid from Georgetown. I hope they arrest and they pull drugs out of their pocket and Trump's like, that's a lot of crack. I hope he goes out with the Vice Squad and finds Adam Schiff trying to score some dope and some women at some seedy hotel on the wrong side of the tracks.
Women?
Didn't say that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And the media's all worried about them getting heckled. Of course, it's D.C. Any other politician would have astroturfed the station and had a bunch of guys in MAGA hats saying 4 more years. These guys didn't care. They rolled up, they rolled out, and that's fine. They keep saying, the left, even though she's to my right, that crime is down. Okay, homicides hit a 30-year high in 2023 in D.C. So they're down a little bit this last year. In an election year, that's suspicious because they just started juicing the numbers. We just found out they had to suspend a guy for going into the computers at his precinct and downgrading felonies to misdemeanors. Jessica, did you see my show last night?
Yeah, I was glued to the TV.
Good. So you saw the guy who runs the police union in D.C. say that when they get onto a scene and there's a kid with bullet holes all in his abdomen and one of the witnesses won't cooperate because it's gang-related, a captain will come onto the scene and say, you know what, we're not going to call it a shooting. We're just calling it taking an injured guy to the hospital. Or if there's a stick-up, armed robbery, guy's a gun, takes your cash and your phone, they'll come along and say, you know what, not armed robbery, we'll just call it a theft. It's a misdemeanor. I wouldn't be surprised if the word went out in an election year last year in D.C. from maybe somebody in the White House, they have to make the crime numbers go down. And I bet it's bigger than just Washington, D.C. I bet the word went out, and that's why you had all these, oh, crime's down. trust me, Jessica, you guys, when we start looking under the hood, you're going to see a bunch of fake numbers.
One thing that amazes me about the contours of this debate as it unfolds is that the right is making it about crime and public safety. I'm not sure what the left is trying to make it about, but Jessica, I'll give you a shot.
I think that the left is trying to make it about states' rights and being able to be in control of your own cities. J.D. Vance makes that argument to Laura Ingraham, like, if you just let us in to take control, but it's states' rights when it suits the right, and then they don't care about it at all when it doesn't suit them. And we should be able to take care of our own cities. That doesn't mean that everything has been run perfectly, of course, but in terms of these doctored numbers, for instance, and the trend lines, well, they were good enough to do President Trump and Kash Patel. I mean, Kash Patel stood up in that press conference.
They didn't know they were doctored.
But
DC isn't a state.
Shouldn't they know? Okay. Sorry. Well, but J.D. Vance is talking about the whole country, that if they just let them in, and they went into Los Angeles as well. Anyway, I think Donald Trump going out on patrol will be a huge win for him. It'll be like McDonald's, it'll be like the garbage man, and we'll be talking about it for a long time. It's made for social media. It's perfect in that sense. And, I defended an alleged child rapist yesterday by accident. So I don't really have many legs to stand on, but I am going to, which I apologize for. And I would like that to be duly noted. But, you say like it's all old white hippies that are protesting this, but there's mass disapproval of what they're doing within DC. And it's not just from old white people. It's from Black people. It's from Latino people. And when
whenever they're interviewed, they're like, thank God I can actually use the subway.
They took $1 billion out of the DC budget, and they said they were going to put it back, and they haven't. And that money would have gone to supporting school programs. It would have been going to pay cops, for instance. Donald Trump should work with Muriel Bowser and the police chief to make DC safer instead of this authoritarian takeover.
I lived there for many years. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, Kennedy. It doesn't get better. It hadn't gotten better.
Well, I think you can look at public safety the same way you look at schools. And no matter how much money, how many millions of dollars you put into a student throughout their life in that system, they don't come out literate on the other end. Muriel Bowser had an opportunity to work with the president. And at first she said she was going to, and then she did an about face. I don't disagree with you. I actually don't like the National Guard being the ones who are in charge of law enforcement. I think if you are looking at D.C. under the federal umbrella as part of home rule, then I think it should be federal law enforcement. And, that may be splitting hairs, but I've always had an issue with the militarization of law enforcement. And I think we have enough federal law enforcement that they could be doing a great job right now. And, you've got Homeland Security agents, you've got U.S. Marshals, you've got FBI agents, and I think you could make a coalition and do the same thing. And I think what the vice president is saying is if this has been so effective in a week, that every crime-plagued city in America can do the same thing without federal law enforcement, without militarization, and they should be doing that. But they have abdicated their responsibility to the citizens of these cities, especially in the poorest districts. So you get to a point where, when you only have just shy of 300 homicides in a year, we want to throw a parade. No, every single one of those lives meant something, but not when you're trying to fudge the numbers with fuzzy math in order to show a better case for yourself, because the bad case is what people feel when they walk around. People feel unsafe in D.C. You can say whatever you want, but if you feel bad, you're not going to want to live there and you're not going to want to visit.
All right. At any moment, President Trump is set to go on patrol with law enforcement, so we will keep an eye on that and bring it to you. But coming up next, Gavin Newsom is going nuclear in the gerrymander arms race.
I'm going to punch these sons of in the mouth.
The Ruthless crew is here. Josh Holmes, Comfortably Smug, Michael Duncan, and John Ashbrook. Fellas, great to see you as always. I wonder, what will President Trump see as he walks the streets of D.C., Holmes?
Well, my good friend, Comfortably Smug, was in the city last week. And there's a lot, first of all, I'll just say from a personal experience, everybody that we encounter is thrilled with the idea that they have a safer Washington, D.C. They can walk around. It wasn't this way. I mean, it's gotten real bad in the last few years. but it's cleaned itself up, and you like walked around pretty late last night.
Yeah, so we had our fantasy draft. It was a ton of fun. Afterwards, I went and I met a friend at a bar. It was probably around 11 o'clock at night, which is usually, you don't want to be out on the streets in D.C. It's not usually safe. Afterwards, I took a walk around the block in parts of Chinatown, which essentially during the daytime were an open-air drug market. It's a block from the arena. It was open-air drug market during the day. Last night, completely clean.
And this
quiet.
This thing,
no drug users, no homeless people, no crime. It was mind-blowing.
This is
We can
like, the area he's talking about, Will, is the area that made the Washington Capitals want to move to Virginia.
A man was shot in the head a block away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
now
we can see
it's
your
just
photos.
free of crime.
We can see your photos, Smug, on the screen right now. They're all pointing. None of them are selfies. They're all pointing away, and I think everybody everybody watching is wondering: do you wear your sunglasses at night?
Will, I would say Smug knows how to make a TV moment, but nobody knows TV quite like Donald Trump himself. And you mentioned it earlier, on the campaign, serving French fries at McDonald's, being the garbage truck man, right? And now he's going to do this with our law enforcement on the streets of D.C. He had the #1 show on television with The Apprentice, and now he's going to have the #1 show with Cops.
Nice.
You guys are all D.C. residents. Ashbrook, we've had a lot of conversations about the crime rate in D.C. and if the numbers that were being published reflected the reality that you all have lived. And again, the four of you have lived in and around the Capitol for quite some time. So we were told for a long time, oh, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down. Is that what was reflected in your quality of life?
I'm telling you, man, I remember just a few years ago during COVID, it looked like gangs of New York outside of our building where we just walk into the office every single day. And what President Trump has done in just a very short period of time is clean this city up in a way that people don't recognize. There's this guy, David Marcus. He's a great columnist, writes at Fox News. He wrote a column just yesterday about how there wasn't a single murder in the city of D.C. over the last week, and people aren't sure that's ever happened in this city's history. And so I think what the president is doing is exactly what he promised. He's going to clean things up, and I cannot wait to see what he does tonight.
Well, in about 22 minutes, 1 hour, roughly, it's scheduled, perhaps, he's going to walk the streets of D.C., and we're going to see exactly what he sees through his eyes, the safety and the change in Washington. If you're ever over, you saw some of our social pages up a moment ago, subscribing to Will Kane Country on Spotify, Apple, or on YouTube. Right there next to it is the Ruthless variety program. We want you to subscribe to that. It's a good hang. It's inside D.C. politics, but with a bunch of guys that know how to talk to you, just like you're having a beer sitting around the campfire. It's those four guys on the screen. Check out the Ruthless variety program. Thank you, fellas.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Will.
All right.
Now, a viral appearance at Union Station. Did you see this video? Vice President J.D. Vance and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, they went to D.C.'s Union Station yesterday to meet with the National Guard troops there that are deployed to help deter crime in our capital. They wanted to thank them. Well, protesters showed up and began heckling them, and Vance did not hold back.
This is the guy who thinks people don't deserve law and order in their own community. It's kind of bizarre that we have a bunch of old, primarily white people who are out there protesting the policies that keep people safe when they've never felt danger in their entire lives.
Show that a majority of D.C. residents don't support the Guard here. So what's your message to the majority of D.C. residents?
I'm highly skeptical that a majority of D.C. residents don't want their city to have better public safety and more reasonable safety standards within Washington, D.C. I don't know what poll you're talking about. Maybe the same polls that said Kamala Harris would win the popular vote by 10 points.
Wow. So Vance's response lighting up on social media. One user writes, liberals losing the narrative in real time. Another said, in other news, D.C. is now so safe that elderly people can protest without fear. And a third person writing, imagine being this passionate about letting criminals roam free. Later on, Vance explained why he decided to make that trip in the first place.
I had heard from a couple of friends who used to avoid Union Station because there were vagrants and there were crazy people screaming at kids, that they avoided Union Station. But over the past 9 days, since the president did this emergency order, it looks a lot better. It feels a lot safer. How many people are living and breathing today because Donald Trump had the willpower to say, you know what, we're sick of D.C. being a home to lawlessness?
Republican Congressman Pat Fallon of Texas, member of the Armed Services, Intel, and Oversight Committees, joins me now to talk about this. I think it's really strange to keep hearing this talk about how the majority of D.C. residents don't want this. They think the city is safe. We talked not long ago to a woman who was sexually assaulted right next to Union Station in broad daylight while she was running an errand, and her attack was never recorded in the D.C. crime stats. It's baffling to me that people would come out and protest National Guard troops who we know are trained to protect us.
These kind of folks are probably paid. They're professional protesters, and there's going to be an element of society, unfortunately, that have Trump derangement syndrome, and they will protest anything. They're going to protest that the sky is blue, on a nice summer day. It doesn't matter. I mean, I've lived in D.C., worked in D.C. for the last 5 years, and it is incredibly dangerous. And I'm 6'1", 230 pounds, and I never felt really that safe. And Union Station was a hovel. It was disgusting. And you know what? Let's just look at the data. I mean, the murder rate in D.C. was 6 times higher than New York City. The murder rate of 27 per 100,000 in Washington, D.C. was higher than Atlanta, Chicago, and Compton. It's one of the most dangerous capital cities in the world, and President Trump has taken bold action where, of course, Biden and others wouldn't.
Well, and AG Pam Bondi is, letting everybody know what the folks are doing out here and what the crime stats are every single day. And she just updated us saying that they've now made a total of 630 arrests and seized 86 illegal guns in D.C. I don't know how that's a bad thing. I want to move on to this topic now because you sit on the Oversight Committee. We've got another senior aide to former President Biden who is testifying before the committee today. Ian Sams, we all know who he is. Huge vocal online defender of the former president. He was a so-called spin doctor, his go-to crisis handler. He's voluntarily speaking behind closed doors. He didn't have to be subpoenaed about a variety of things, including the possible cover-up of the former president's mental decline. And we all remember when the Hur report came out, Congressman, and Ian Sams describing it, saying that, some of the commentary from Hur was gratuitous, that it was wrong, it was inaccurate to say that he was an aging man with memory issues. He was losing his memory. What do you think we're going to get out of this interview today?
You know what we're doing here, Aisha, is getting them on the record because they are fabulous professional liars. We saw with our own eyes and ears, the good Lord blessed all of us with trillions of brain cells between our ears, and we saw for 4 years the systemic decline of Joe Biden. And now to sit there and get these folks on the record under oath to say, was he competent or not? Was there really a conspiracy of this protectionist Politburo, if you will, of close aides that limited his public appearances, that limited the media's access to him because he couldn't function on a daily basis? We all saw it unfold. And then that disastrous debate in June of 24 left no doubt whatsoever. But they're still continuing not only to spin and lie, but now they're going to do, some of them are doing it under oath.
Well, where does this go then, Congressman, if one after another aide comes in and defends President Biden?
Because you always, this is why you conduct investigations, Aisha, because you might get someone that actually tells the truth, and it's very inconsistent. You might get that smoking gun, might get somebody to say, you know what, we did A, B, and C, and then they start to crack. That's why whether it's, something petty or something serious like this. And also, our offices filed legislation to ensure that the auto pen can only be used for ceremonial stuff, for answering, a letter from Trevor, who's an 11-year-old Boy Scout from Iowa, not to have, force of law legislation.
Okay, Congressman Pat Fallon, thank you for joining us on the program today. Good to see you.
In New York, Republican Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being with us. I just want to replay a little of the scene that we saw yesterday at Union Station when the defense secretary and the vice president were there. Listen to this. clearly these protesters seemed a little unhinged. Do you think that they were protesting efforts to crack down on crime, or were they just protesting the Trump administration?
Well, they didn't look like the typical resident of D.C., not counting members of Congress, their staff, and people who work in the various agencies. But, these look like the protesters that we all face every day in our district. They're suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. They are just against anything President Trump does. But I'll tell you what I've been hearing from my staff and others and people that live in D.C. People are loving having actually safe streets that can walk around all over. I know some of my staff, I know they've been assaulted. One of my staffers was held up at gunpoint. Another was grazed by a bullet. Early a couple of years ago. I mean, it never ends. And I've had numerous carjackings in Navy Yard where I live. So I think everyone would like to see a safer Navy Yard, a safer Washington, D.C. I live just 2 blocks from Nat Stadium. I mean, these are important parts of our city where lots of people go and they bring commerce to our communities. Isn't that what it's about, is to have safe communities so our businesses can thrive and people can enjoy the beauty of Washington, D.C.? I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention, of course, what goes on in the 7th and the 8th wards, which is where the preponderance of crime is in Washington, D.C., and has been historically. Pam Bondi had the update on crime crackdown. Here's what she said. We've now made a total of 630 arrests and seized 86 illegal guns in D.C. 53 arrests were made yesterday, plus 24 ICE arrests and 10 guns taken off the streets. Our incredible U.S. Marshals even helped recover a missing child. Our mission to make D.C. safe again isn't slowing down. And yet you've got these people who are screaming at the top of their lungs about efforts to crack down on crime. Some even going so far as to say, well, the National Guard's not really doing anything. They're just standing around. But, I mean, appearance can be deterrence as well. It's like on a holiday weekend. Highway Patrol often puts an empty police cruiser. Yeah, on a holiday weekend, Highway Patrol often puts an empty police cruiser at the side of an interstate. And when people see that, they slow down. So just the appearance can help deter crime.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look what Nancy Pelosi did. She covered the Capitol with National Guardsmen from all over the country. She put up razor wire fence to surround the Capitol, which was an embarrassment and unnecessary. And I think that, the National Guard, Kathy Hochul, our governor, who's decrying President Trump using the National Guard, brought the National Guard into our prisons because she had 2 prisons that were actually overcome by inmates. And we lost control of them. And so the National Guard are doing a lot of deterrence, a lot of background, and a lot of support. And I think that really helps. A lot of it is definitely what you described as, look, the appearance of having some strength and some people that are going to enforce the law really helps. And I'll tell you a big problem in D.C. that I know that Janine Pirro and others have talked about is a lot of these crimes are being committed by teenagers. Yes. They're kids. It must be maybe a post-COVID thing, but a lot of them are out. They're not going to school. They're all over committing crimes. They're taking advantage of the fact that their school truancy isn't being enforced. So I think this is a really good thing for D.C. And I think that look at some of the other cities. I come from upstate New York. We have problems in our cities, and it's because of New York state laws, not just New York City. It's the laws that are put in place by New York. Everybody can get away with anything, and including they're letting prisoners out all the time. And so we don't even have people in our prisons. So, I mean, these are huge problems that we're facing with crime. And I don't understand why Democrats are defending the criminals. They've been doing this all year, whether it's a Tren de Aragua or, a gangbanger from El Salvador, whoever. Why are they defending these people that have committed crimes, murder, rape, dangerous crimes, burglary, extortion against businesses and our own American citizens here?
The vice president was on with Laura Ingraham last night. Here's what he said about the D.C. crackdown and sort of sending a signal to blue states and blue cities that are beset with crime. Listen to this.
How many people are living and breathing today because Donald Trump had the willpower to say, you know what, we're sick of D.C. being a home to lawlessness. We're going to bring some public order back to the nation's capital.
So, I mean, the message to cities that are beset with crime, and they could just be blue cities, or maybe there's some red cities in the South as well that have high crime rates. If you're willing to do something about it, it's possible to attack the problem.
Absolutely. I think, action is what President Trump's signature is. He is a man of action. He's not someone that sits around and discusses things. He takes action. He listens to a lot of viewpoints. And I think this is what we really needed. I'd love to have President Trump come in and clean up a bunch of the cities in upstate New York, whether it's Albany, Rochester, which trends on X every day for among the highest violent crime in the Northeast. One city that, was the home of Xerox and Kodak and Bausch and Lomb and all these great companies. It's a dangerous place to be because of the policies, again, where Democrats coddle criminals and don't protect their own citizens.
Congresswoman, good to catch up with you. Thank you so much for taking the time
Thank
this
you.
afternoon. All right, we'll see you again soon. Our Peter Doocy is taking his position on the North Lawn of the White House. This is quite an interesting thing that's going to happen tonight, Peter.
Yeah, when they give President Trump his badge and his gun so he can go out on patrol with these guys in D.C. No, that's not what we expect to happen. There are obviously extreme security concerns anytime that the president even comes out on the lawn behind a tall fence and with a small army of Secret Service agents here. So we know that there are a ton of additional federal assets in some of the real problem spots for crime in Washington, D.C. And we've been reporting on this for the last couple days. The major crime stats, murder, violent crime, theft, motor vehicle theft, they're all down in Washington, D.C. for the last couple days. And so President Trump wants to go out there and talk about how it is safe enough even for a president to go where no president has gone before, which would be some of these very dangerous areas at night if there is not an event going on. We know that they have command centers kind of popping up all over town to give the visiting federal agents or the reassigned federal agents and National Guardsmen their instructions for the day and for the night. And so we would think President Trump is going to be somewhere like that, getting a presentation about the crime stats. And also, again, we've been hearing President Trump talk a lot for the last couple days about how he says he's been getting phone calls from friends who have been afraid to go out at night and afraid to go to dinner in Washington, D.C., who feel like now they can go out in Washington, D.C., especially after dark. So if he wants to see what it's like for himself, we might see him do a retail stop. We don't know that. That is just conjecture based on the president's comments just about every day since he used his power as the president in this federal district of D.C. to flood the zone with all of these extra law enforcement deputies. John.
Peter, it's Jillian. Do you imagine that the president has ever seen action like this up close and personal? Meaning, if he does bear witness tonight to some kind of apprehension while he's out on patrol, do you think it's going to surprise him what he sees?
I know President Trump, we've seen the motorcade go through some pretty dicey areas. And this is well documented during the campaign. They had to drive through a pretty rough part of Atlanta, of Fulton County, to take him for his mugshot. So he can look out the window and see some of these high crime areas. And again, he lived in New York City. He's got a lot of stories from living in New York City for most of his childhood and adult life. So I'm sure he has seen unsavory things happening. I would also think that wherever he is going tonight is going to be swept of criminals and people that might be the target of an arrest. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be really visually stunning to see a president in places that you don't normally see a motorcade.
Of course, if you take him to a place where all the criminals have already been swept out of, then he doesn't get to see law enforcement operations, Peter, in action. So I'm sure that all of this is going to be OTRs, as we call them. I don't think anybody will know where the president's going to be in advance, but it'll be interesting to see what comes of that, because always the president takes the camera along with him. Peter, thank you. Get us more details as they come in. All right, now let's bring in former FBI agent Nicole Parker. She's on the phone with us. And Nicole, as we were speaking about just a moment ago, I'm sure that security for the president is going to be paramount here as he takes to the streets of Washington, D.C. I imagine that they would probably put him in one of those heavily armored SUVs that the president travels in, typically when he's out of town, going to visit disaster areas and the like. But how do you think this might unfold?
Well, first of all, you're exactly right. We will take no risk, obviously, with the President of the United States, and Secret Service will make sure that this is, extremely safe to the extent that is their job, is to keep him safe. But one thing that we all appreciate in law enforcement about President Trump is he doesn't talk the talk. He actually walks the walk, and he backs the blue. He respects our law enforcement, and he's all about law and order. And this is what he ran his campaign on. And he said, we are going to make America safe. And right there in Washington, D.C., the capital of our nation. And he's going to show America, look, if I can do this, so can you. And President Trump is one that is always doing unprecedented moves. But you know what? He gets out there and he commands respect because, like I said, he doesn't just talk about it, he does it. And what this symbolically could be for the nation is saying, look, we are going to be safe. We are not going to tolerate violent crime anymore. And again, having worked violent crime and worked the streets in Miami as an FBI agent, yeah, we encounter some very dangerous and gnarly situations. But putting and saturating law enforcement, as they have done, and the number of arrests, the number of firearms that have been taken off of the streets, I can tell you, I know FBI agents in D.C. right now, and they're like, there is a drastic difference from even a week ago and how safe they feel walking around, Washington, D.C. today. But it is unprecedented, and obviously his safety is of paramount importance, but this is going to show the nation he doesn't just talk about it, he actually does it.
Nicole, this is Jillian. Presumably, the president has decided to do this because he wants to see and experience what goes down firsthand. What do you think he is most hoping to learn?
Well, again, having seen the darkest of humanity in my work at the FBI and having worked violent crime, it does open your eyes to what Americans are facing and to certain dangers that people have. My guess is because they have locked down DC so tight over the last week or so, hopefully there's not a whole lot of crime to see out there because they have done such an amazing job. And like I said, the statistics speak for themselves, but he wants to see it firsthand. And this is why people love President Trump, because he resonates with the normal person and he makes you feel like you matter. He relates to your issues. He tries to see things from your perspective. And I respect that a lot. But again, his safety of paramount importance. There can never be a moment where our president is put into danger. The Secret Service will handle this with perfection. But putting myself in their shoes, if I had the president do a ride-along with work I was doing, that is phenomenal. And that is something that law enforcement has been lacking the respect of the prior administration. I can tell you the defund the police, not backing the blue, all of that nonsense that went on. This is symbolic for many reasons, to relate to the American people and to show his support for law enforcement and what they're doing every single day.
Well, Nicole, you're certainly right about that. The president does like to meet people where they live, whether it be in the seat of a trash truck or whether it be at a McDonald's drive-through window. And now riding along with the police tonight in Washington, D.C. Nicole, as always, thanks. Great to talk to you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.